What if the world isn't just external? What if the way we think, speak, and believe actually shapes what we experience? Today's guest brings that truth into focus.
Leave your ego at the door and get ready to be raw. This is Strength to Overcome, where real men find their strength in weakness. All right, guys, welcome back to the Strength to Overcome podcast. I'm Ryan here with my co-hosts Joe and Matt. This is episode 39. Guys, how you doing?
Excited to be here, ready to grow.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan and Joe. Good to be here again with you guys. Looking forward to today's guest.
Yes, sir. And today we have with us Dr. Steve Young. He is a holistic coach, mind, body, spirit, with a degree in kinesiology from Penn State and a master's and doctorate degree in physical therapy from Drexel. He's an Amasian who has helped thousands of individuals re-engineer their health for a better lifestyle. He is the chief solutionite of Body Solutions and the consciousness tinkerer and chief love officer of Amortal. Steve, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, excited to drop in with all of you and really support others in how to navigate life.
Absolutely. Well, first off, I know Matt's going to dive into your backstory a little bit, and we're going to kind of figure out how we came to be sitting here today with you. But first off, tell me a little bit about Body Solutions and your role there and what you do currently.
Yeah, interestingly, Body Solutions. So I'll back up. So I've had about stewarded 7 different businesses in my life in the last 30 years. And Body Solutions was a clinic I had where we treated over 9,000 patients 20 years, and really from a very holistic perspective: mind, body, spirit, biological, psychological, energetic. And from that experience, it really taught me a lot of like how reality actually works and how to actually help people end their loops, I call it, right? And then it has nothing to do with what I learned in medical school, what I learned in traditional school. What I've come to realize is that the industrial complex that runs our world does not teach us how to actually thrive.
Steve, appreciate you being on and giving us that opening. I'd like to know a little bit more about how did you even get to the position that you're in? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people out there that follow your material and you've got a lot of stuff out there for people to dig in on. But for our audience that don't know you and are unfamiliar with your work, can you take us back a little bit about how did you even get to this space? Because this is not something that you just jump into.
Yeah, that's a great question. From a very high level context perspective, I believe that every moment of our lives is divinely orchestrated. And so, for example, when I was 5, I started getting these inner knowings. It was like instructions that wasn't my voice. And I've had that my whole life. And at 7.5, I walked into a room and saw my parents literally trying to kill each other. And so all sense of safety and sense of like I'm held left my body and it became numb. And that led me to embark on a journey of learning everything I possibly could about how mind and body and spirit works. Because my internal reasoning was that if I could learn it, then I can understand it. If I can understand it, then I can control it. If I can control it, then I'm safe. And so I embarked on, decades of learning everything possible, reading books and traveling the world, studying with shamans and esoteric teachers and traditional, science, medical school, all the things. And it wasn't until age 37 that I realized that way only led to the illusion that if I just understand and learn one more thing, then I'd be safe. And so I started to let go of all the learnings and just sit and be in stillness mode. And what I realized is that the moment I let go of wanting and seeking and searching, the more the answers and what I was striving for came automatically. And so we can get digging into.
So when you said you walk in at 7.5 and you're witnessing, I think you said your parents trying to kill each other, that wasn't metaphorically speaking, right?
Physically, yeah, like choking, death. Yeah.
Is that something that you talk a lot about? And I've just missed that story because obviously that doesn't happen to many kids and it's pretty much kickstarted your entire journey here.
Yeah, I do mention that a lot on different podcasts. And so it's not like it's hidden. And I feel like I've also shared that in a lot of my content before. And, from a traditional psychology perspective, one might say, if I were to use mass media, brain controlling, keep you enslaved language, the language would be something like that was a very traumatic event. There was a major wound that you want to heal. And there's a reason why I pre-contextualize all those words with all the previous contexts. And so I, at this point, look at it as it was really one of 100 different breadcrumbs that the divine force placed in front of me for me to walk a certain path. I don't see any of the breadcrumbs as being more or less. They're just different frequencies, right? Different elements. It's like broccoli isn't better than carrot, just broccoli and carrot. And so there were different ingredients being placed in front of me for me to follow to arrive at where I'm.
So do you feel that some of these life events that you could probably describe and talk a little bit more about are all part of what got you to this point?
Yeah, yeah. I'll name a few things. I mean, I'm not going to go into all. There's many. Some key ones are 17 years ago, I had my own clinic, 7,000 square foot facility. We had, all kinds of practitioners. And I went upstairs to get a massage from one of our massage therapists. And a minute later, I didn't even make it downstairs yet. I got a text message from someone 2,000 miles away that said, "How was your massage?" And I looked at my phone. I was like, "How do you know I just got a massage?" And her answer was, "Your soul told me." And so that was my first undeniable experience that there's this other reality that I've studied and read about since I was 16. It's different. Like, it's one thing to read about it. It's another to be like, someone's like, "I talked to your soul. That's how I knew you got a massage." And so I embarked on a journey of like, how does one talk to someone's soul? And really that revealed what I believe is ancient wisdom that was hidden by the church that allows us to do things way beyond talking to another soul. I just had Dr. Larry Farwell here at my house. He proves scientifically that our consciousness renders reality 24/7. We are all creating not only our lives, our consciousness is creating all of reality in all the universes. This is proven by science. This is not like esoteric, worldly, religious, spiritual stuff anymore. And so there's been a lot of those type of moments in my life, and realizing that we are not only a drop of the ocean, but we're the ocean. We're not just human, we're also divine. Many ways to contextualize it.
So would you say then that, and I could chase a couple of these trails as rabbit holes, as everybody around me knows I love this type of stuff. But the question that does initially come to mind is, if we're all connected, if we're all able to sense that sort of information from each other, would you look at the world that we have now where they've got, 5G, we've got the computers, we've got the TVs, we've got the phones, we've got the microwaves, we've got all these things creating these, frequencies and these vibrations. What would you say to someone that says, well, all of those things are being put into place to disconnect us and to take away that ability that we are, in my opinion, we are divinely, created and blessed to have that. But I look at it as a maybe more nefarious type thing. And a lot of people, laugh at that. But what is your thought on, is there a lot of that happening to try and disconnect us intentionally and create, dis-ease and disconnection?
Yeah. So in December of 2023, I was in Colombia on a spiritual pilgrimage with the indigenous people of Colombia. And there are four main tribes. One of them is the Kogi. And we were with the shamans of the Kogi. They're called Mamos. And just to get an idea of their training, the shamans spend the first 14 years of their life in a cave in complete darkness by themselves. And so you can imagine how connected they are, and they live a completely different reality than Westerners, right? They didn't see any sunlight for the first 14 years in complete darkness. And so they had to navigate a very different reality. All that is to say, they can definitely telepathically communicate. They can sense and communicate with all of nature, all the things. And so one of the things that they shared with me verbally was, we have no enemies. And then as they spoke, we have no enemies, they telepathically said that everyone is already, and already. And they also said, and this was all instantaneous, even though I'm speaking in sequential waves, and that's how telepathy works. And they also said that there's a wave coming. It's moving faster than what humans can imagine. We get to ride the wave as long as we pull up our anchors, right? So just to give you context before I answer, all of that means that we are creating reality and we get to pull up our anchors, which is like our previous stories of what we believe is real and true. Everything that we believe is real and true is not real and true. It is just a story that's been programmed into us, right? Like we used to think that physical matter, like this table is solid. We now know it's not. It literally is a bunch of vibrating strings in a certain frequency, right? String theory. And so to answer your question, I believe that G and all the controlling forces that are designed to suppress us and control us are happening because of us. And here's the punchline of this joke. If we set the intention to awaken, if we set the intention to heal, if we set the intention to be more free, we must render reality where the opposite of all those things are happening now so that we can then achieve those things. And so there's no enemy. We are the ones that's collapsing reality into 5G and all the forces that are containing us and enslaving us and trapping us so that we can experience and wounding us so that we can experience the healing, the freedom and the expansion and the awakening and blah, blah. This is literally how reality works.
So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We've created this environment, so that environment creates more of the same and it's self-fulfilling, or you can try and break that hold that society or the program has on you and free your mind and understand, like you say, hey, this is not actually a table in front of me. It's made up of matter. It's made up of, energy instead, right? It's a vibrational frequency. I think Joe Dispenza talks about this a little bit in one of his books, saying, we are 99.999% energy, right? We are made up of something other than what we think we are, right? We can't touch or feel, right? That's a perception. Is that right?
Yeah, if we just look at quantum mechanics, the paradox is all things, all material matter is 100% energy in waves as well as matter. And what dictates if it's going to be matter or waves of energy is our consciousness, right? So if you haven't viewed like the double slit experiment, just go on YouTube and type in the double slit experiment. It literally proves that our consciousness is what dictates the infinite probabilities of waves of energy that is the entire universe. And it will collapse it into particles that matches our intentions and thoughts and states of being, and mostly our subconscious. And so we are constantly rendering reality. So it's not even like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Probably the most accurate to word it is, you're literally an aspect of God, crafting reality 24/7 along with God. Like you're the drop and the ocean at the same time. And that you are literally rendering all of reality 24/7. And I feel like the moment that the person that hears this, my ask is when people hear this, they don't say, oh, I think I understand. Because the word I understand or I know is probably the most damaging words humans can ever say because it keeps you trapped in your intellect. Imagine if someone said, instead of I understand this, they'll say something like, I'm becoming this, or I'm living as this, right? Or I'm remembering, or I am now the field of existence in this. All those statements are very different when I know and understand. Right? And so our language itself is designed to contain us because we opted to play this game. Humans want to evolve and awaken. And so therefore they must create a reality to do the opposite of whatever evolution is and whatever awakening means for some people.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that movie Inception, right? I think we've all seen that, where we've got these layers and you try and stay with the story for as long as you can, and then your brain says, okay, I've lost it. Is he in? Is he out? You get to the end of that movie, and no spoiler alerts here, but you get to the end of it and you're like, okay, wait, what was reality? What wasn't? How does it end? And I think we can look at movies like The Matrix, right? Where they literally talk about, you know, I know that Joe and I have talked about this, right, Joe, where we talk about, I know the steak is fake, right? But I'm going to enjoy it anyway type thing, right? We can create our own reality by our thoughts, our intentions, and the emotions that are attached to that. Is that a good way to kind of, put that into a nugget?
Yeah, I think the more accurate language is we are. It's not that we can. You you can never turn this off. This is not an ability that you turn on and off because
Yeah, I like
as
that.
long as you're alive, whether you're sleeping or awake, and it's a whole nother topic of that whole paradigm, you are constantly rendering reality. So it's not like something you need to harness or practice, learn or achieve. That's the illusion. Like we're constantly rendering reality. I always laugh when there are coaches that say, "I want to teach you how to manifest." I'm like, when is a person not manifesting? They're constantly, as soon as they're born, they're basically manifesting, right? Because we
That
know
just
our
hit me. That
creates reality.
really hit me when you said it's not something you switch on. It is. You are.
Thank
So
you.
if you're not intentionally working towards different thoughts, different intentions, different emotions, that means that you are by default actually creating the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Essentially, if our reality is governed by a set of principles. And if you don't know, it's almost like if you buy Monopoly and you just like whip it open and the four of us start playing, but we don't read the instructions, we're going to be like, all right, what do we do with these game pieces, the dice? What are these cards? What is the money for? We would all have to like figure out and create some set of rules to play this game. And we might fumble around a bit. It might feel hard. Like I'm not sure like how to move this. Like what do I do with this? But if you just read the instructions, you go, oh, this is so fun. Like there's a set of rules of Monopoly. Reality has a set of rules. There are these 7 principles that's been around for 30 plus thousand years, right? Called the Hermetic principles. And so all we're speaking about is the law of polarity, which is when you set an intention for something, the opposite also occurs. Another law is the law of mentalism. Our every thought is crafting reality. Right? The law of vibration states we're literally one unified field of vibration. We are not separate. The law of correspondence tells us that our external world, everything that's happening in your life is corresponding to your internal self. Right? And so people that are teaching manifesting, really the more accurate language is let's become aware of our subconscious, which we know through neuroscience has the processing power of 200 million to 400 billion bits of information per second. That is the computing power or the reality rendering power of your subconscious 200 million to 400 billion. Guess what your egoic frontal brain thinking mind is capable of? Between 8 to 200 bits. Right, so if you start to realize what's really running your life is your subconscious, the unaware aspect of ourselves. And this is why Carl Jung hinted about if we're not aware of our subconscious, we will always be a slave to it. So anyone that's listening, if you have anything that's happening in your life, you're like, I don't want this to happen. This was a problem. Know that your subconscious has manifested that. And this is a game of being aware of who and what am I, not how do I resolve the problem. There are no problems. Everything is just a mirror of you.
Joe, do you want to run with something there? I know you and I were talking about something just like this over the
But
last
yeah,
couple of days, and
I
I know
mean,
you're
yeah, a lot is going through my head and a lot of powerful stuff. I've thought about 3 different things I wanted to talk to you about, Steve.
Let's do it.
And from what I'm hearing from a practical stance is that we're the directors of our lives, right? Like we are in total control. But it sounds like if it's under the surface, how do people how do people approach that? From your hermetic teachings, how much responsibility do we have for those patterns for showing up in our lives? And then what can we do, right? Like if it's subconscious, how do we approach that, if we're not even aware of it consciously?
Yeah. Yeah. To answer your question, we are 100% responsible for every moment of our lives. But the paradox of that is we're also 0%. The way I said it is our egoic self and subconscious self has been 100% creating our lives, but yet as the drop in the ocean, but the ocean exists, which is an aspect of us as well. Another name for the ocean would be God or spirit or universe or source, whatever term people use to designate as this infinite intelligence that is governing reality. We can also say that God, universe, spirit, source is what's responsive. And that's the paradox. The paradox is it's all us and it's 0 us because it's all God. And it's for us to realize that the two, the I and the infinite are actually one. This is the grand game of life, by the way. We think we're here to have kids and, buy a house and, amass some money. And if we have enough money, then we get to like do what we want and pay for things and have this experience. That is just a complete story illusion of the Western world. Like if you spend time in Tibet, they don't live this way at all. They live a completely different. It's in many other countries in places around the world. This is not reality. The whole buy a house, retire, save money. It is just not in their entire reality. This is just a story. And so if you travel the world enough and you go to enough countries and spend enough people, you go, huh, everything's a story, but what's the unifying reason we're here? It is simply we are an aspect of God separate from God, but we're really one, only to remember that we're only one, experiencing God through itself, through the illusion of separation. That's about it. And I've made many videos and content that humans think we have a purpose. Like we're going to build an orphanage, we're going to save some people, we're going to raise good kids. We're just here to simply experience all of life. Every pain, every struggle, every joy, every bliss is for us to fully experience through our own lens so that that data goes back to source/God. And that's the reason we're here. And, Zach Bush, many smart people, Tibetan masters have spoken about this. As soon as you think you have a purpose, you've set an expectation and now you're screwed. You're trapped by that expectation. It's a box.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so is it wrong to want to play these different games that we've created as humans? Like if I want to play the American game where we, capitalist and go strive and build things and do this, or I just want to go chill in a cave for 15 years, like seems to me that the more powerful approach would be to just be okay with playing the game, but not being so attached to it. Is that kind of what you're alluding to?
Yeah, yeah. In all my content, I tell people that none of this content is about what's right or wrong, or good or bad, or positive and negative. I removed those 6 words from my vocabulary years ago because they're just words of judgment. And so everything's just about awareness. For sure, if someone's like, I love the capitalistic game, play it. I'm just here to say there's infinitely other games that you get to play because a lot of people don't realize that. They think this is the one game. I'm like, no, there's infinite games that you could play. Right? Like when you talk to shamans, they laugh at the Westerners. Like, why are you trying to solve problems and build technology only to have it fail? You can literally go into the spirit realm and build it in the energy spirit realm to test it before you ever do it in the physical realm. Westerners don't know how to do this. Yeah. And so in alchemy, we know how to access the higher realms of existence, the astral plane, the mental plane, the spirit plane. And you can literally make a 1% change in the higher planes, and it causes a 10,000% change in our physical world. Westerners don't know how to do this. So there's infinite ways to play this game of reality, way beyond you're traumatized, you're wounded, you need to heal, and you need to be awakened because you're asleep, and you need more to feel safe and significant. That's all I'm saying. There's entirely different games to play.
Gotcha. So from your work, why do people often, know what to do, but they don't do it? Is it strictly because of their subconscious programming? Or they know this, right? Maybe they don't know this, but because our channel is about accountability. So I don't know if it conflicts with kind of the ideas that you have, but for us, we feel that it's very important for men to be accountable. And I think it helps create growth. And, I'd love to hear your ideas on that and what you think of that.
Yeah, no, I don't think it conflicts at all. I think what I'm saying is you're not simply being accountable for your physical actions in physical world. You are accountable for all life and all of reality. So it's the same accountability. I'm just expanding the context of what you're accountable for. Does it make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like that's more responsibility.
It is.
It's kind of heavy. It sounds pretty intense.
It can be. If, to answer your question you had asked, if someone knows, quote, what to do and they don't do it, is that because they're subconscious and things? I always use those Russian nesting dolls as a way to describe this, right? So the outer doll has another doll, has another doll. The outer doll that governs us is our identity. Everything we do has to fulfill our self-assigned identity, or else we would go insane. Within our identity, then we have our subconscious, our stories. And then within that, then we have our perceptions. And within that, we have our actions. And so, yes, many people, I'll give an example. Most men, I've not met any Western civilization men, I would say, that identify as being stupid, like they value being stupid and weak. Do you guys know any person that brags about how stupid they are and how weak they are and how awesome? I don't.
No.
Most men do the opposite. They identify as being strong and smart. And here's the thing. We all know through an oscilloscope, a wave of energy does this. If this is strong and this is weak, it's the same wave. It's not two separate things. They're not opposites. It's just the same wave of energy that is flowing. And whenever you only want this in life, it is so unnatural because energy does this. In other words, if a human attaches their identity to be only strong and not embracing also being weak, you will have a hard life. You have to. It's the only way to support your identity of being strong. You must be placing burdens on you to carry. So to answer your question, when I say you are responsible for all reality, that's only burdensome if you have not identified as being weak as well. If you only identify as being strong, it must feel burdensome to you because it will fulfill your identity of, look how strong I am. I'm going to take this on.
And you'll fight the weak.
And you
You'll
will fight.
that
Yes.
concept of weak. You'll make sure that you keep that away. And if it comes, it's a negative.
Whereas being weak is amazing. There's a ton of benefits of being weak, just like there's a ton of benefits of being stupid. When you fully embrace being stupid, guess what? You don't think as much. People just automatically solve things for you, and people will do things for you. When you identify as being weak, people will help you. You don't have to be the one that does all the things. And so it's just society has programmed us to only love half of reality, essentially. That's super important for people to realize. We've been programmed to only love half of reality. And that unnatural way of being is what's causing the root cause of most people's problems. If you start to embrace the flip side of all of your identities, and this is a super simple, practical exercise any listener can do. You just write down, I am smart, I am kind, I am courageous, and I am generous, like all your I ams. And then you write down the opposite of every one of this. If you're smart, then you're stupid. If you're strong, then you're weak. And then in a separate pieces of paper, you draw a column down the line or down the page. And you, for example, you write smart, I am smart, and I am weak, right? On either side of the line. And then you write down 10 benefits of being smart and 10 benefits of being weak. And what you start to realize is that there absolutely are benefits of being weak. And the more you embrace that, the more you start to let go of this attachment to being smart and strong.
Wow. I was just going to say that's to sum that up, would it be that the focus is not to attach to anything, like to
Yeah.
be open to everything and attached to nothing, kind of?
Yeah. So I've 2 years ago, so in the last 16 years, I've studied these Hermetic principles. And 2 years ago, literally at 11 p.m. at night, I was told by this voice I've had since I was 5 to get in front of the camera and make a course from it. And so literally for 4.5 hours, one take until 3:30 a.m., I delivered this course. And so in the course, I talk about how the analogy is, imagine we're a child in a playground. And let's just pretend there's only 100 swing sets. There's infinite. And every swing set is an identity, right? Smart and stupid. Another swing set is strong and weak. One is maybe generous and being stingy, mean, kind. And so society teaches us to only ride the front half of that swing, right? Our parents are like, all right, get on the swing, but never be stupid, only be smart. And we swing only the front half of the swing. Whenever we want to swing back, we put our feet down, we stop ourselves, and we use all this energy to try to only ride half the swing. But if you ride the full swing, you go, oh, this is what it feels like to be strong and weak, smart and stupid. And you start to realize that after riding that swing for a while, it gets boring, right? You're like, I have the full experience. I'm not just having half the experience. And you get off the swing, which means you become non-attached automatically without ever setting the intention to be non-attached. Because if you set the intention to be non-attached, what's the spell that you just casted? But you're currently attached.
Right.
And so by loving both sides of every identity, you start to get off of all the swings. And you're right. At the end, you're not on any swing. So you're not smart or stupid. You're not kind or mean or brave and scared. When you're on no swings, already you're nothing. And what's the opposite of nothing?
Everything.
Also known as God.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm doing the
That's a
same
lot.
thing, Joe. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, that's a lot that's what I was gonna say. That's a lot to take in. When somebody comes to you for help, Stephen, where do you even begin with them? Where do you start with someone who's maybe needs to change something in their life or has been down on their luck or is lost or they might say to themselves, like we talked about earlier, having a purpose, they might want to find a purpose. But what's the first thing you would do with someone, knowing all these things that and it can get pretty complicated, right? Where would you take them first?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at the personal development space and what I call Western New Age spirituality, essentially any spiritual book that's written in the last 100 years and all the personal development stuff, it seems complicated, right? Because there's like tens of thousands of books on personal development and spirituality. And just keep in mind that every author has to take the original teachings and put a spin on it to make it unique so that they can be like, read my book. Because they can't put a book that says, read the other guy's book. That book's not making sense.
That might be a book.
Right. And so when you start to realize this, then you go, you know what? Maybe it's not so complicated. If you look beyond all the human distortion of the absolute truth of what is, it's actually pretty simple. And so just when I answer the question, it seems complicated. And so the simplicity of life, if there's one takeaway, if someone came to me and says, all the things are happening in my life, what can I do? If there's one thing that I could verbally say to them, it's this: your relationship to your choice and action matters way more than the action itself.
Well, that's great. That's good stuff. Say that again.
Your relationship to the choice and action matters way more than the action itself. We've been programmed. What are we taught? Actions speak louder than words. That's an inversion of the truth. Our words, our relationship to the act dictates reality because it's our consciousness, our frame of reference of what the meaning is that collapses energy into particles that matches our relationship to the choice.
That's super powerful. And Matt and I had a discussion earlier today about the exact same thing. And I love hearing it from you. Please expand on that if you can.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. Let's play a fictitious, but it could be real scenario. Imagine all of us have twin brothers, right? Genetically same. And we eat broccoli. The act is eating broccoli. And our relationship to it is we love it. Like the texture, the taste, the smell, like when we put it in our mouths, it's like, oh my God, this is like joy and bliss. Our twin brother with the same genetics eats broccoli every day as well. But the relationship is he read a study that says broccoli is one of the most anti-cancer foods you could possibly eat, which it is. And so every time our twins eat broccoli, the relationship is fear of death. They don't want to die from cancer. When we eat broccoli, we're literally in the experience of joy, bliss, satisfaction. Let's track our health for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Guess who's going to be more healthy? Same broccoli. And you can apply it to everything in life. The reason you're giving to your act is literally dictating more reality and not the action.
So, I think Ryan, Joe, and I are all sitting here going, right, my brain is trying to put together the next question while we're almost trying to process the information, right? And, what I hear is that, there are people out there, I think we all know, right, where they drank and smoke and, lived to be 100, right? They were like a bloody chimney, right? They just, a pack a day, got a whiskey on the counter next to him, and it's like, my goodness, he was 100 years old and he died with a cigar in his mouth, right? And it's like, what in the world is happening here? And then you've got this, 35-year-old athlete that goes out for a run one day, and I've known people that this has happened to, runners and stuff, and they drop dead in their driveway. I remember hearing about that one day. I'm like, what in the world? This athlete, right? This triathlete, had a heart attack in their driveway, and they ran every day, great shape, lean, like a professional. We've got these two stories, right? And it almost feels like you're kind of describing a little bit of that, where the intention or the joy versus, the relationship actually mattered in this story.
Absolutely. That's a great example, right? Someone could, on the surface, their actions seem unhealthy. But when they make these unhealthy acts, they eat their cheesecake and they smoke the cigars and they drink their tequila, they're literally in joy and bliss. And they're absolutely going to live longer versus someone that eats a very clean diet, constantly measuring their food and taking their supplements and trying to be healthy so they don't die. They're living in fear. They're fear of death, not actually enjoying life. Of course, that person's not going to live as long. And again, you can apply this to anything in life, your relationships, your job, finances, health, everything. You start to question, what is my relationship in these realms of life? Whereas most coaches, people are telling you what to do. No one's stopping and saying, well, why am I, what's the reason behind the doing? First, right? And so that's where I typically get people to go. And that is the content that I put out for the masses. And there are certain people that come to me when we do a live experience, because much of what I'm speaking it is tough to take in from the internet. But then we'll immerse in a 2-3 day, 4-day experience where the entire experience vibrates everything I'm speaking. The way I give the analogy is like fish can't understand water unless you put fish out of water for at least a second. And then when you put the fish back into the water, it's like, holy crap, good. Where was that? I do create experiences that pulls people out of the Western illusion, the programming, that you're not about, it's the greatest lie, you're not there yet, it's the greatest lie, the programming. And I put it into the existence of you already there, you're actually divinely perfect. And by the way, and I don't teach it, they physically live it for 3 days. So to answer your question, for certain people, I've experienced this small group, 8, 10 people. For the masses, it's the content rooms sharing.
Yeah. Wow. It's Matt and Matt came over and did a cold plunge in a sauna with me, and we had a great conversation. He was only able to stop by for a little bit, but we were talking about that, like kind of in a different way, acting as if you're already all that, right? Like whatever it is you're after, you're already there, and enjoy and be everything already, right? And it's that same idea, right? Where it's similar, at least it reminds me when I hear what you're saying, it kind of aligns with the idea that you need to act as if you're enough already. Like none of it is matter. None of it really matters other than to experience life in its fullest. And, some people need it delivered differently, I feel like, because their brains work differently. Some people are more practical. They have that, like you said, they're more intellectual. So it's hard for them to grasp onto this. But I would say, just it's kind of divine, or however you want to put it, that you're on today. And Matt and I had this conversation that aligns almost perfectly with what we were going through, and about being enough and reminding ourselves that we are enough, like we are everything already. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, whenever these get mentioned, I always jokingly say it's as if God is orchestrating everything, because God is, right? And so there's nothing, when you start to think about it, imagine an ant trying to explain to a human the meaning of life. The human would laugh, right? Because the ant would be like, the meaning is to move some dirt, build a little, nest for our colony, whatever ants do, right? Because the ant does not have any comprehension of not the human life, but like astrology and universe and quantum mechanics. The ant doesn't know. We are the ant thinking we know how reality works. And God is like saying, this is kind of silly. You have no idea. You have no concept of reality. And so that's just like a really powerful realization. There's only one truth in reality, which is we don't know. Everything beyond that is just a story that humans have made up. And so once you realize that, then you go, interesting. What that means is we get to create any story that we need.
So can
And
I ask a
that's the,
follow-up question there?
yeah.
Sorry, I know we've got some audio issues. Hopefully this recording comes through as clean as we can get it to be. But I'm just sitting here thinking about, we've had some episodes in the past where we've talked about making very cautious decisions about the people you spend time with, right? And there's obviously a lot of people out there that we've got in our lives that feel draining, they feel exhausting, they feel negative, or whatever it is that would be on the, the bottom of that frequency line, right? It's a lot of work to be around certain people, or maybe you're just allowing yourself to be in those people's presences more often than the opposite, right? And so I think that, as you were describing, you could be anything. You could also very be unaware of, okay, well, I'm surrounding myself with people that are not thinking like this or doing anything like this at all. And you're actually burying yourself in the negative reality that you're trying to get out of. Did that make sense?
Yeah. So keep in mind, our understanding of quantum mechanics illustrates reality. We know that we are 100% energy and 100% matter at the same time. Another way to say this, we are one unified field of vibration. And of course, we have a human body and we're, physical at the same time. And so moment to moment, I always tell people, first you decide, do you want to play in the energy world right now? Do you want to make sense and navigate as energy, as the one, as the infinite? Or do you want to navigate reality as the separate egoic self? Just be clear on that, because they have two very different set of rules. What you spoke of in a language that we typically hear in psychology and personal development of setting boundaries and letting go of people that are toxic in your life and they're energy draining and they're causing you to feel this way, that is the game of separation for sure. But there's this whole other game of unified field, which means these toxic people don't exist. They're literally a projection of your own consciousness. And the reason you are feeling whatever in their presence is because they're trying to mirror to you an aspect of yourself that you have yet to fully love. So I have two daughters. Since they were young, like when they were like 5 and 8, I said to them, look, if I ever correct you, discipline you, or react to anything that you're doing, know that it has nothing to do with you. You are just exempting a behavior that illustrates an aspect of myself I have yet to fully love.
That is powerful. That's the nugget. We got to get that clip out this week because that just hit me right in the nuts. I'll be honest with you. Yeah, that got me good. I'm down on the canvas after that one. That was for me. Boy, oh boy. What I'm seeing in those around me is a reflection of something within me that I had yet to love.
Yeah, I'll give an example. Let's say you were bullied when you were young and you spend your whole life saying, I'm never going to be weak again. I'm going to be strong. So I'm never bullied again. And you spend your whole life like becoming smarter, stronger, physically, mentally, emotionally, and all the things. But what you forgot is that you're telling that version of yourself, right? The one that was bullied, that you're not good enough. You can't be this way. You got to be strong. And so when you observe someone get bullied and someone's being mean to you, whatever, you're going to have this reaction. It has nothing to do with them. You're being reminded that that weak version of you that was someone else was mean to actually deeply gets to be loved and valued. And the moment you deeply love and value that version of yourself when someone's mean to you, you would not have a response. It would not trigger or bring about what I'd call a divine spark of awareness, because you become fully aware to love that part of yourself. And you can apply it to any situation in.
I mean, I don't know if it's hitting you boys like it is me. I'm sitting over here feeling like I've got to start living all over again. Like I feel like I was just born, right? Because I believe in a creator. I believe in, that we were created in that image. Therefore, we are also blessed with the ability to create. And so
Yes.
now my brain is thinking a lot of people now I was raised very, strictly and religiously. And so, I'm looking for this, okay, how does it tie into having a creator that made us with the same abilities, but we never see those same abilities happen in society. I mean, for those that grew up in church, we're always told that you've got the ability to raise the dead, and of course, we don't see it in this culture. Now it's happening outside because I've heard stories and testimonies where these things are actually happening, right? Whether people want to believe it or not, I've got firsthand accounts of things like this actually taking place in other countries, in other cultures, but it doesn't happen here. And in fact, it's almost frowned upon to even speculate that we have this ability to raise the dead. But we'll all say, hey, you know what? We're all going to pray for someone that's in hospital, and we're going to try and, you know, catch the Almighty's attention to heal them, when in all reality, we're only halfway there. Is that right, Doc?
Yeah, so there are original teachings of Jesus, and you also have to laugh, right? Like the letter J wasn't invented about 450 years ago. So prior to 450 years ago, that was not Jesus's name. Fun fact, right? Yahweh, other names. And so the original teaching says, you made an image of God, and the kingdom of heaven is within. Church is an institution created by man. And we look at, here's some facts. Do you know what the number one cause of death in the history of time is? Religion. If you look it up, when one person says, my God is the right God and your God is the wrong God, and we're going to conquer you to prove that, that reason has been the number one cause of death of humanity in our modern day history. And so that already tells you something. Wait, how could an institution that preaches life be the number one cause of death? It's because it's been distorted by man, a separate self, people who did not fully recognize that we are already God, right? That there is no process or medium or modality or mechanism needed. You can never not be God. Just like you can never not collapse energy into physical reality. You can't stop it. You're constantly Godding as well as humaning, I call it. And so this is a powerful realization for all of humanity right now to remember that we are always Godding, not just humaning. And what you just said when you feel like you're reborn is because I'm helping you all remember that we're always Godding. And that's a whole different game, right? All the rules of humaning have their value. I feel like we've all exhausted that game. We've been playing that game our whole lives. I'm just here to remind people, hey, there's this other pretty awesome game called Godding we get to play. And has a whole different set of rules.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because, you know, when we've been raised in a system that, you know, I believe at some point I remember hearing the stat that there were, you know, 40,000 different Christian denominations, right? And they're all going to war as to who's right. And it's like 40,000. So you get, you know, two people that want to start their own church, and you know, a year later they each decide that there's a slight variation in their belief system, and so they each split off and they start their own followers, right? And then before you know it, and it replicates and so forth, and you know, you end up with 40,000 different vantage points, when in all reality there's still just one, but our perception of the creator is what's wrong. And so, you know, there's a lot of, you know, Christians out there that might listen to this and say, okay, well, is he dismissing God? And I would say, me personally, I hear that no, this actually points towards a creator saying, you were made in my image. Why are you not creating, right, the way I designed you to therefore go forth and multiply and recreate, right? So when we shut out this concept of yours that I think probably rocks the boat for a lot of people, for me, it just opens up. There's a connection with the Almighty now that's just a little bit stronger, where I'm actually expected to create, and when I'm not, I'm actually not fulfilling my divine created purpose.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I honor everyone that is playing the humaning game, right? The game of separation and that. And I don't ever want to suggest that that's the wrong game to play. I'm always like, I think we've played that game enough. And so for all the people, and even religion, I know a lot of people that have like exited the church and gone into general spirituality, and they have this disdain. They're like, oh my God, I was so contained. I realized there's all these things. Like, no, you needed that containment to feel the freedom. So what I'm trying to say is, my message is we get to love everything. Everything that has happened has been divinely orchestrated, and there is no right or wrong. There's no good or bad or positive, negative. And you know, one of my favorite movies, it's called The Shack. Have you guys seen the movie The Shack?
Yeah.
And he recommended it. I've seen it 21 times. And so there's a scene where he's talking to the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit's asking him, you know, what do you discern as good? He's like, well, it helps me, my family, the community. And she's like, what do you discern as evil or bad? Well, if it harms people that I love, harms myself, the community. And then she says, so you're the judge. And when your good clashes with another's evil or bad, wars ensue and people die. And this was never meant to be. It was always meant to be a conversation amongst friends, meaning humans were never designed to judge. That's up to God. Humans try to judge, and this is why conflict happens. And so there is no judgment in anything in our lives. It's all the programming says this is bad. Feeling sad is bad. No. Getting divorced, bad. No. Losing a child, bad. No. And so it's an interesting reality to live in when you start to obliterate and not involve any judgment in life.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful, powerful stuff, man. I wanted to circle back with what you said that I really liked and maybe expand on it. And then I've got a question for you, kind of to sum everything up, even though there's so much more. You mentioned divine spark of awareness. That's something you use. And what I heard was you use it even when it's deemed a very negative thing, right?
Mhm.
Like it's that divine spark of awareness. And I like that reframing for people that are more practical. Say they're more like intellectual. It's a good framing to change something that people perceive as negative into maybe neutral or positive, whichever one they want to go to, right? And so with that, I'd like to leave our listeners with like something, that you could leave with them about accountability, about healing and self-mastery, like something they could take away, something that could really help someone that maybe is in a dark place and their perception is lost.
Yeah. So I'll draw upon a few teachings from certain humans, such as David Hawkins. He wrote a book called Letting Go. We could draw upon some ancient alchemical principles called the law of correspondence, right? As above, so below, as within, so without. So anyone that's currently experiencing a dark, dense state, current narrative says that's bad, you got to get out of it. That's a story. What if you leaned into it? If you're feeling depressed, sad, lonely, anxious, frustrated, the current narrative is you got to get out of that. You got to be in joy, happy, bliss all the time, which is equally not favorable in life, by the way. I would say like your daughter gets stabbed in front of you, like I am in complete joy and bliss, not favorable. And so you lean into it because everything is just energy. And the fact that you try to resist when you try to not be sad, the sadness lingers. When you try not to be depressed, the loneliness or the sadness and the loneliness, whatever you're pushing away lingers. But if you lean into it, if you magnify it, if right now, if you're at like a 6 out of 10 loneliness, make it a 10 out of 10 and fully feel into the version of you that is experiencing the 10 out of 10 loneliness, depression, sadness, and witness that version of you and show that version of you in love. Because love brings everything back to God and source, not cognitive behavioral therapy or neurolinguistic programming or any personal development. And so you love that part of it. And I guarantee you through this very simple process that version of you that is held with love returns back to the one, the infinite, or God. And therefore you don't have the symptoms in it.
Real quick, I thought of my kids when they were young, and I know Matt and Ryan can relate because they have young kids. They live that principle because when they are sad, they cry it out. And then a second later, they move on and they have energy for days. And it's because they don't have the story. They don't attach a story. They feel it fully and they move through it. And that's pretty powerful. That because I've heard that before, but not delivered in the way you did it. So, wow, thank you so much for that. I think our listeners are really going to benefit from that.
Yeah, I just want to share. When we were children, prior to all the society programming, we lived in complete accordance, resonance, coherence with source, God, universe, spirit. And then we were purposely programmed away from that for actually a very useful reason. I call it a hide and seek with our divine selves, right? We were born very connected to our divine selves, but like, you know what? It's kind of boring spending all this time with you. Can you go and hide? I'm going to count to 10. I'm going to go and have fun and find you. And this is our adult life. And so all that is to say, there's nothing to learn. Everything that we were given to be joyous, happy creators and all the things, we were born with it as children. Children just imagine things and create. Children play for no reason. I always say a child would ride a swing set because they want to. An adult would ride a swing set because they read a study that says if you swing for 10 minutes, your sleep score on your Oura ring will improve by 20 points. They attach that mechanize everything. We've forgotten how to play, right?
Man,
And
that's
so
so
this is a
true.
reminder for all of us that we were already born with all the wisdom and knowledge to be creators of life because we were all children at once.
Love it.
Amazing.
Power. Oh man, a lot of takeaways from today.
Well, yeah, I'm going to be the first one listening to this when it comes back out. And of course, catching up on all the missed material that you've already done. So, you'll have to excuse me, but boy, oh boy, I've got some catching up to do. This reminds me a lot of the material, as I mentioned earlier, from Dr. Joe Dispenza, where he opens one of his books by saying, "This book might ruin my career." And he goes down this rabbit hole of saying, "Listen, there's a lot of people out there that aren't going to understand it, but I feel impressed to put this out there." And for me, it was one of his most powerful books. And I always look for two or three witnesses, right? I've still got some of that religious mindset that flows through me, and so when I do hear two or three things by people that I, can respect and look up to, and it seems to match scripture, I can really feel comfortable hearing it and feeling like, man, I've just been given the keys to the kingdom, or I've just been given a cheat code to the system, and I'm just empowered over here and pumped to dive in on a lot more of your material and stay in touch here and get connected with you, and hopefully maybe another episode. I'm just, from the bottom of my heart, I'm super pumped to have just heard some of what I know is a drop in the bucket of your material that you've put out there. So thank you. I know Joe and Ryan have spent a lot of time nodding on this episode for those that are only listening, but man, I'm blown away by that, and I think there's room for a lot more growth with a little more understanding. So, thank you for, giving that to us and for our listeners, and, selfishly for me, I'm pumped, man. That was fantastic.
Yeah, and thank you all for one creating this space for this message and this transmission to be broadcasted into the world. And if you notice, I strategically started this call off with them as the listeners are going through this, and all of you may review this, approach it from living as this instead of understanding it. That tiny language shift will shift everything downstream. Like our words, I remind people, we don't piece the alphabet together, we spell, because every word is a spell, a code that we're casting that creates all of reality. And I see a lot of people trying to change the future or change their lives, but they're still speaking the same words and casting the same spells, but they think the action that they need to do a different action. No, we do new language. And so question every word that you're all considering speaking and thinking.
I didn't mean to come back to this, but you just said something, and I believe I said it to Joe this morning, so he can vouch for me that I said this. But about 5 days ago, I remember waking up, and I normally go for a walk in the morning. It's quiet. There's no one interrupting me. And, I spent a lot of time just trying to listen versus, talk. I want this. I want that. Why is this happening to me? Why is that happening? And so about 5 or 6 days ago, which I've been working on this for about, the last 12 months. But 5 or 6 days ago, I woke up in the morning and I was lying there, and I woke up hearing two words. The words were create space, right? And it just gave me chills. And so I was telling Joe this morning about that, and you just said it. You said, I just want to thank you for creating this space. And my whole body just got this wave that just shot through me like I just stuck my finger in an electrical outlet. I'm like, oh my goodness, like there it is. Create this space, create space, right? And you've just given me context to something that I've been really meditating on and praying for the last 5 or 6 days, trying to figure out what is this create space that you want me to do? And bam, you just finished our episode by saying thank you for creating this space. And to me, it just connected, and that's a perfect example to me of what you're describing is being connected with something other than what we've been taught is okay to live in this reality. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I was tapping into the field, or I could say I was speaking to your soul. Many ways to contextualize it. That's why I chose those words.
Amazing. And you didn't know that story that I just told Joe this morning. So that's just, that's proof right there on air. Thank you.
Stephen, where can folks find you if they want to learn more about what you do and what you offer?
Yeah, I share most of the content on Instagram these days. So the handle, or I don't even know what it's called, the name is Stephen with a V, Stephen Young Alchemist. They can reach out to me there. That's typically where I put. So I get these like divine inspirations, ideas, and I make a video and I throw it up on Instagram. So
Awesome. We'll be sure to link that in the show notes so folks can click over and find you there. All right, guys, that's all we've got for you today. Appreciate you joining us. Feel free to reach out, check out Stephen on his channel, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Doc.
bye, everyone.
Thank you.